Welcome to Talk Business and Politics. I'm Michael Tilley, here today with Conner Eldridge. Conner is the former U.S. prosecuting attorney for the Western District of Arkansas, also Senate candidate, Democratic Senate candidate in the 2016. Gosh, was it? It almost seemed that almost seems like a long time ago.
It does.
2016.
It does.
Thanks for coming in today to talk to us about the events, the recent events, particularly President Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey. Now, you're in the judiciary, obviously. Give us, the layman, some perspective, some reason why it is not common for presidents to fire FBI directors, although even Comey said, I serve at the will of the president. So give us some perspective on that.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me. It's great to be back on the show. This is a big deal. When you look at the history of the FBI and the history of the Department of Justice, certainly the president does have that power, but there's a reason the FBI director is appointed for a 10-year term.
Right.
And there's a reason that position is a special one in our government and is intended to be removed from politics and focused on investigations and finding the truth and finding and pursuing justice at every turn. And so when the president fires the FBI director, that's a big deal, and particularly under these circumstances. So let's look at what we know. We know that this week President Trump fired Jim Comey, certainly something he can do, firing the FBI director. But the stated reason was that Comey mishandled the Clinton investigation last year, that he shouldn't have commented on a pending investigation, which is right. He shouldn't have done that. Prosecutors and certainly law enforcement should not comment on a pending investigation.
But those are things the president praised Comey as a candidate. When he was a candidate, he praised Comey
That's exactly right. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions here. Does anyone really believe that President Trump fired Jim Comey here in May as a result of what Comey did in October in commenting on the Clinton investigation, or what he did back in the summer of last year in usurping Loretta Lynch and Sally Yates? So that's just not credible, and that's what has led to all these questions about, well, why was he fired? And you know, Michael, the White House has changed their story an awful lot in the past couple of days.
24 hours.
And as a prosecutor, and certainly for folks that have a law enforcement background, when somebody starts changing their story, it raises a lot of questions that are serious questions that demand answers.
Well, Democrats, I mean, let's look at the other side. Democrats have changed their story somewhat as well. You know, they were calling for Comey to resign. I'm not sure they were calling for him to be fired, but they were calling for him to resign or be some kind of punishment before the election, when he, discussed, when he sent the letter about the Clinton campaign. So now they're saying they're coming to his defense. Tell me why I shouldn't be why I shouldn't call them hypocritical on their stance now on Comey.
Well, those that are doing it in the way you suggest that have fair criticism, but really this isn't about necessarily Jim Comey. Let's just set the politics aside, and this is what drives me crazy. Democrats read from their politics, Republicans read from theirs. I'm tired of all that mess. We need to focus on the facts. And when you look at the motivation for this termination, it just defies logic that Trump could have based this termination on something he spent months and months praising Comey for. To your question as to Democrats, Comey should not have made a comment on a pending investigation, period. And people in both parties said that. Obviously, more Democrats said that than Republicans. But it's certainly a reasonable position to say Comey was wrong to make a public comment on a pending investigation. But this termination under these circumstances defy logic and overlap with a serious issue, and that's the Russia investigation. And we need some answers to that.
Now, Mr. Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, has asked, according to Politico this morning, for a private meeting with Senate intelligence leaders. You know him. What do you think he's after? What do you think he's going to ask of that Senate panel?
Well, it's hard to speculate on that, but I think we can expect a lot of testimony over the coming weeks. What is clear is that we need a special prosecutor. There's a lot of smoke here, and the way you determine whether there's a fire, who started the fire, and certainly who committed any crimes, either regarding Russia or any other issue related to this, is you have a special independent prosecutor. I think Republicans and Democrats ought to join in calling for that. Having a congressional committee or a Senate committee is not enough. We need something independent of the political process, because let's don't forget, the big issue here is that Russia interfered in our election. We know that. We don't know all the facts of that, who they talked to, what that means, and that goes to the integrity of our democracy, and we need to know that one way or the other.
Well, quickly explain to me, someone like me, and I truly feel like this, I do see the need for a special prosecutor, but at the same time I have mixed emotions, because I remember the whole Ken Starr debacle with the Whitewater investigation. I don't want a multi-year, drawn-out, expensive investigation. So how do you explain to someone like me that that's not going to happen in this case?
Well, we're in an interesting legal position with that, because the old independent counsel statute expired. It was not renewed. So that is not the mechanism under which someone would be appointed unless a new statute were passed, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So this special prosecutor would be appointed by the Deputy Attorney General, by Rod Rosenstein, who I was fortunate to serve with, along with having served with Sally Yates. And so what I think needs to happen is that special prosecutor needs to be appointed, and the critical thing there is that the mandate given to that prosecutor is what ought to be focused on, and it needs to be broad enough to encompass all of these issues related to Russia, and broad enough to give that independent prosecutor the freedom to follow the facts wherever they may lead, to whomever they may lead, but also not so far-reaching that you sort of have the wandering that occurred back in the Clinton years.
Can you put a deadline on it? Is that a good thing?
I think it's good to have a general timeline, but boy, it's tough to do that with an investigation. The right person won't need a deadline. Because there's a sense of urgency to this, and it's really a great mission. It's what I loved about being a federal prosecutor. This is a serious issue. Somebody ought to go find the facts, follow them wherever they lead, pursue justice, and that's how we fix problems like this in our government.
We've got just about a minute left. There's been a lot of talk about who should replace Comey. Condoleezza Rice has been one of the names that's thrown out, in terms of, because it's critical now. The president's put himself in a box. He has to appoint someone who is, as all the pundits are saying, unimpeachable. Who do you think that should be? Have you heard any names, or let's pretend that Conner Eldridge is President Trump's advisor. Who would you advise? Who would you advise he pick?
I don't think he's going to pick up the phone and call me.
No, I know he's not.
But I think it needs to be certainly someone who is strong, who's committed to law enforcement, who doesn't care about politics, and it will do the right thing. Because let's don't forget, this doesn't just involve Russia. This involves a number of cases across the country that go to the security of this country. One of the people that I served with that I'd love to see appointed as either special prosecutor or director of the FBI is Pat Fitzgerald, former U.S. attorney from Chicago, served under Bush and Obama, has prosecuted Republicans and Democrats alike, and is beyond reproach. And I just wish I were in a position to go fight this fight, because again, it goes to the values of our country. And in these tumultuous times, surely we ought to be able to come together and agree, let's find the facts, let's unearth those, and then let's make those known and charge those who have committed a crime. And that's how you cut through all this to what goes to the heart of our country.
All right. Hey, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us today at Talk Business and Politics.